The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Thursdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Hope you're all right. And let's get to it. 489-1240 to get in. 1-800-825-5865. The phone numbers to dial up across the Hail Varsity Radio Network, and email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. Todd, my apologies. I need to be better at the mailbag. So we'll get to more email today. We'll get plenty of your thoughts in the stream with the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Subscribe and like, watch the show that way. You can catch us across the different Twitter and Facebook platforms as well. And as always, check the show out on your time with the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and the YouTube channel. Elijah is all packed and ready for the road trip. Connor is getting in to baseball season form with trips to the gym. I got to tell you, Elijah's checked the vehicle. He's got the family truckster all ready to go to Colorado, and you're counting the hours down. 2 left, and then it's a little breather for you, and I'm excited for you.
Are you leaving tonight?
Tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Tomorrow morning.
I was going to say, that's bold.
No, it's the bars tonight.
Well,
No, it's definitely not. We're going to save the bar bills for this weekend.
that's a good idea.
What it is kind of interesting is with me, I'm planning on going to a concert Saturday night, Rockies game Sunday, Nuggets game Monday night. There will be driving through the night on Monday night into Tuesday, I believe. Because
take your time. Just be back here by 4 Tuesday.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Back by 4 Tuesday. I think the plan is immediately following the Nuggets game on Monday night, going to try to make it to North Platte.
It's 4 hours, yeah.
Yeah, reasonable. I mean, the Nuggets game will end at 10 o'clock Mountain Time, so it gets me into North Platte somewhere in the smack dab in the middle of the night. And then I think I can take a little nap up until the sun comes up, and then I can finish the drive back to Lincoln, make it in time for work. I believe that's the plan, barring any car troubles, which I have gone through. I have made it through the checklist. I don't think there's any forecasted problems. The one issue being, if you guys remember the trip to East Lansing.
Yeah, I was going to say shades of Sparty.
I blew out a tire.
I flew. So.
Yeah. Shut up.
I flew and rented a car.
And basically, if you haven't heard this story, if you're new to Hail Varsity Radio, on the trip out to East Lansing, it was smooth. 11 hours went by like nothing. Easy trip out. Directly following the Nebraska-Michigan State game, made the trip over to Chicago, hung out with some buddies in Chicago for the night. And then on Sunday, let's drive back to Lincoln. We're making great time back until roughly an hour east of Omaha. I blow out a tire on the side of the interstate on a Sunday night, directly following the time change, so it's dark on the side of the interstate on a Sunday. People are angry. I'm trying to change a tire. It was a whole mess. It should be noted, my 2 front tires, I got 2 tires replaced after that Sparty road trip, so my front 2 tires are the same set that blew up on the way back from East Lansing. But they had a much better wear pattern because my car's front-wheel drive. They had spent most of their time on the back. We had just rotated the tires for the Boulder road trip last fall. So those less worn tires are now on the front. They remain on the front, and I think they look good. They don't look great, but I think they can make it to Denver and back. So we'll see about that. We've made it through the checklist.
They can go 16 hours.
We've topped off the oil. The coolant looks good. The brake fluid looks good. AC's working great. I think... I even got a car wash today. I think everything is squared away for this road trip, but I might be calling one of you guys on Tuesday morning at roughly 7 a.m. saying, hey, any chance you can make it to North Platte? I'm kidding.
Well, I'm going to say no.
Just take your computer.
From the side of the interstate, Elijah Herbel checks into Hail Varsity Radio.
Make sure that hotspot's fired up. So Elijah's ready to go off to Denver. Connor, again, is, you said bar bill. Connor, you were rocking the barbells. You're stretching like you're an old man in the newsroom. I walk by,
in pain.
And dude's got 1 foot up, and he's kind of grunting. and he's just pulling the hammies like he's freaking Ricky Henderson.
This is why I hate leg day, okay? It's because of stuff like this. It hurts so bad.
He's limping. I mean, you're hobbling, brother.
Yeah, it's ugly. I did it Monday. I went to the gym and did that. And
Monday you hit leg day and you're still sore?
oh,
Yes.
yeah.
You got to be more consistent. They stop being sore for so long whenever you hit leg days more consistently.
It doesn't help when I have a fever of 102 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, leave him alone.
And then
Some people power through the pain, power through the fever, and continue going to the gym.
anyway, then we had
They're called winners.
Well, speaking of winners, we had a doubleheader in softball last night, so that didn't help I guess it did because it kind of got me loosened up a little bit.
Their hammies are blown.
Yeah.
Just,
Hey, but we won both games, so
that's
I mean,
big.
that's good.
just a gallon of Ben Gay on each hammy,
Yeah, I mean,
or
the
find
ice bath is
a
much
nice
needed.
massage,
Yeah.
and away you go. So both you guys are in rare form. You're waiting to get out of jail here, and Connor's been beat up in a bar fight, the barbell, with those Romanian deadlifts. Guys, the question to ask the audience, we'll get our starting five shout out. Elijah's got another question he's got to ponder, and that is, what do you spend on a Nuggets-Lakers playoff game?
Well,
I have been going through the tickets.
I think things change now because we were talking about this on Monday, and now the fact that they're playing LeBron again,
Yes.
that changes things for me at least.
Ticket prices went up a good amount for game 1. So that's why I'm looking at the game 2 added. I already paid for this concert ticket on Saturday night, and the two events were slightly overlapping, so it was going to be a tough pull. So it's going to be the Monday night game 2. Prices are reasonable. The question I am kind of pondering, I believe lower bowl is going to be worth it. Finding one of the cheaper seats in the lower bowl. The nosebleeds at the Ball Arena in Denver, they're fine.
But what are we dealing with here price-wise?
So if you're going upper bowl for that game 2,
Nosebleeds / oxygen's costing you what?
I didn't even think about
once
that.
you throw
Nosebleeds
in
Colorado.
once you throw in the ticket fees somewhere in the 180 range.
So 180 to I was there.
Mm-hmm. Lower bowl, you compare that. Like once you combine in the fees, I think the cheapest lower bowl seats I can find are just south of $300, somewhere in that 280 to 300 range. The good lower bowl seats will run you 4 to 5, but I have found some suite seats. I am not sure. It's two suites next door to each other. All of the tickets in them are available. I'm assuming it's some sort of
Swingers party.
I was going to say probably some Avalanche fan that has their suite booked year-round, and they're selling their tickets for the Nuggets game because they don't care about the Nuggets as much as they care about the Avalanche, which is a story for a lot of people in Denver. That's how I'm assuming it is. They have them listed at a very reasonable price, $325 each, plus fees, gets you up to that $380 range. Is it worth it to shell out the extra money to go sit in a suite?
$380 for a suite. Is food and drink complimentary? Is there a spread?
I would
Is there
hope so.
booze? Is all of that included?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
The thing is you get into the right suite crowd, someone ends up picking up that tab for you, possibly.
But the problem, that's the flip side. If you're in the wrong crowd in a suite, there's nothing you can do about it.
Then you're dropping $100.
It's one thing to be sitting among the normal people, the peasants in the lower bowl.
The true fans.
You can blend in and you're fine. If you're a suite, you're like one of 8 people, 7 strangers that you're going to have to get to know throughout this game.
No, you won't. You're watching the game.
I'm not going to sit there silently in the corner. Do you know me?
To be fair,
I
though,
work in radio. I love talking.
If you're going to a Nuggets playoff game that features a rematch with the Lakers and LeBron too, I'm sorry to those other 7 people. I'm not paying attention to you. I'm watching the damn game.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me.
Which is the question why of like, is the suite even worth it? If I'm going for the game, for the experience, I think there's something to the experience about going and sitting among the common folk.
I agree. I think that's fair.
I'm a common guy.
What do you want to spend? Do you want to spend the same for a little closer view and a little less comfort, or do you want to be comfortable and still be able to watch it and
no line at the bathroom,
right.
no line at the concession stand.
Right.
There are some benefits, but I would say for the most part, sitting in a suite's overrated.
It's for Carson's birthday. We had family in Oklahoma City, so he wanted to go see Kevin Durant. He was hurt, but we still took him down to OKC. Took him to Katie's restaurant, and it didn't cost us anything because it was a family member who worked for Chesapeake Energy, And so we got in, and it was great. It was cool. And that's like his first sporting event experience. So from then on,
set the bar too high.
The bar's way too high. And when he goes to Nebraska games, he's got a couple buddies who have skybox spots. So that's how he dirties his way in. So I think the last normal spot he sat was still really close to the floor at PBA for Nebraska-Michigan State, and still really close to the field for Nebraska-Michigan State football, the snow game, if you remember back to 2018. So he's got a different perspective. I've shelled out for a ton of seats in my life, mainly in college, and be it Colorado or Notre Dame or whatever, and it is what it is. I would do the suite. You can make fun of Pinky in the Air all you want, but I just think if you're going to spend the money, at least have some comfort and roll the dice with having booze and food included.
I think the situation here is if it's regular season,
you're seeing LeBron maybe
I say go sweet regular season. But when you throw in the fact that it's the playoffs, the Nuggets are a 2 seed, they're playing LeBron again, I'll probably, well, obviously, revenge on the mind of the Lakers, right? They're probably not going to win the series. But if you're in the lower bowl, or really in any just regular seat, you're in the rally towel madness, you're in the whiteout or whatever they're going to do for it. And I think that would make for a better experience during a playoff game as a fan. That's just my take.
Yeah, it's up to you. We'll get to the starting five right now. Chucky Hepburn, where does he land? Is he headed to Lincoln? Is he headed to Creighton? Does he go to Kansas with Storr? Storr went down to KU. He left Wisconsin once that dude bolted Badgertown. Chucky is gone, and with Fiddler. Does Chucky and Fiddler come as a package somewhere? You've got NU Grandpa that's back at it. Jeff Snitley from the Boulder Peace Treaty checks in the stream is number 2. Dion 3, NASCAR Eric in at number 4. And you have Brennan from the Black Hills says, here. So good work. And Brennan says, for the record, I'm first, and Dion is second for the morning hookup show tomorrow. That's pretty good. Tuck says, what's up? He's in. Excited to have NU Grandpa back. Brian is here. KG back in the fold. Santa Cruz's very own Shane is here. Jeff says, what's up? Walter from Philly is in. And, of course, another Snitley makes his way. Tiger Shark Diver. What does Walter
NBA
say?
is trash.
Aha. I couldn't quite see the emoji
That's
there.
what he says.
Anonymous was asking about the Terrence Knighton tweet coming in here with the Chucky doll. Chucky Hepburn in the portal. And Anonymous doesn't think he's coming to Lincoln from all appearances. You just wonder if they both end up at Creighton. And I know that Fiddler with Creighton was probably wondering about starting or extensive playing time. We shall see. Nebraska just signed a point guard or got a point guard from Utah a couple of days ago, and you don't know that you're going to go get a second point guard if you just got one.
Well,
maybe the mayor knows something we don't.
Especially when you already have one maybe on roster and Ulyss's status still up in the air.
I mean, he's still on the team and he's eligible. So you really have 2 starting caliber point guards. Mm-hmm. Something that's really interesting to me, and because Chucky obviously is good enough to transfer within the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, I mean, we saw Eli Rice do that earlier today with Penn State. I think it would be really interesting if him and Fiddler packaged up, and now with A.J. Hoggard leaving Michigan State, do they flirt with a little Sparty action? Because that was one of the schools that Fiddler transferred to. I'm just throwing this out there. I don't think it will probably happen. This is more of a long shot. But I think that could be really interesting. If you're a Nebraska fan and they both end up wearing blue next year, you're going to be like, that sucks.
Would you rather have them go to Sparty or have them go to Creighton?
I mean, you got to see him either way.
You do.
So which one hurts you more as a Nebraska fan to lose to?
Creighton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It is interesting. I mean, can we say here that in all likelihood Wisconsin is off the table for Fiddler?
Well, if Chucky's transferring, yes.
I don't think that's going to happen anymore.
His top 4 got cut to 3 today.
But you added one back with Michigan State, though, so we're back to 4.
No, Michigan State was in his top 4.
Was it in the top 4?
Yeah.
Yep. Wisconsin.
Shows what I know.
Creighton, Nebraska.
Michigan State.
All right, well, Wisconsin's off the table.
Well, we'll have to check out and reach out to our friend Jack Ebling, Mr. Spartan Basketball. Really good point about age and whether or not you do a suite or the stands with Elijah's dilemma. Do you go suite for Lakers Nuggets Monday night? Do you spend the same or a little more for Lower Bowl? Or do you just say, I'm in the building, it's an arm and a leg to get me in anyway for 180? Do you go top tier? If you're going to go, shell out for it.
Okay, I appreciate, because I come from a family that my dad does not care about going to live sporting events. He'd rather watch it on the couch. I was always the black sheep that was like, no, I want to go. And he's like, why would you want to go? I'll sit out in the cold and go watch this game. So I appreciate the insight here.
No, do it.
Who knows how I got into sports being the guy whose dad did not like going to live sporting events, but I think that was more about paying for a seat for an 8-year-old.
Well, I think it was the 8-year-old that kept Dad
Can
from,
you just be on my shoulders for the whole game?
To live events. You're going to have to go to the can. You're going to want 7 hot dogs. You want cotton candy.
I feel like I need to apologize to my father now after hearing all this, because I was definitely that kid.
Dad, take me to the rooftop. Do it now. Carson, go scalp some tickets. Okay. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel. Great write-up from Counter Read on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, Vogues is having computer issues. You want to try giving him a shout, Connor? Is that good? Unless he magically pops up on the stream. Great to be back with you. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. You did get some thoughts and some views behind the basket for 380.
325 plus fees, so it comes out to probably like 380. It's a lot of money.
I don't know. So where does Chucky end up? We'll take your guesses in the stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, 489-1240 to dial up. We'll hear from Tony White coming up here in about 15 minutes. He met with the media. Some pretty good insight from Coach White after Saturday's scrimmage and just his thoughts with being, I don't want to say called out, but really challenged by Matt Rhule. All of the coaches were, but specifically the Nebraska defense. And we'll hear from Tony White, Coach Gary Barnett coming up at 5:25. Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7 Sports. He'll join us at 5. Chris at HailVarsity.com. Emails we'll get to in just a minute. Suggestions to you from KG. Just get in the arena. We say hi to Brandon Vogel with Counter Read, counterread.com. Vogues will have to recheck the stream for Saturday morning, bud, but thanks for joining us via phone. How are you?
I'm doing well. Sorry about that. My internet decided to not be at its best at the worst time.
That's okay. You just need Matt Rhule to come on over and holler at your internet.
That's a great idea. I'm going to see if I can get that done tomorrow. So we're good to go for Saturday.
I like
this. Is good though. It's reminiscent of old times having Vogel on the phone every Thursday as opposed to on the stream.
I like Vogues in the stream. I can see what cool baseball cap he's wearing. And were you wearing a Hawaiian shirt? Was it a George Darlington tribute today?
It was. Yeah, I was wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I've thought about do I need a Detroit Tigers hat just when I wear my one Hawaiian shirt to play the Magnum PI angle, but I don't have a Tigers hat.
You've got to grow the stash to really go full bore with it. So we're playing.
I don't want to encroach on Elijah's territory.
Well,
you wouldn't really be encroaching on much. This mustache is nothing to write home about.
So where does Chucky land? Chucky Hepburn in the portal. Wisconsin is crying. If you run into a Badger fan, give them some Cornhead Lager and tell them it's going to be okay, even if you're lying to them. With Storr and Chucky leaving, I giggle. But where do you think he ends up, man? Do you think it's Creighton? Do you think it's Sparty, do you think maybe he follows Storr down to KU? What's the guest say for Brandon Vogel?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Creighton would make a lot of sense given what the Jays kind of need going into a new season. Omaha native, of course, and they've more than proven themselves as a pretty steadfast program. And I think Coach McDermott's pretty well respected. That said, it's tough to look past if your top options are Creighton right now, or Tom Izzo at Michigan State, or just kind of the general aura of KU. You can't really go wrong. But I guess I'd maybe make Creighton a slight favorite in that race.
I agree. I think Creighton's a big-time possibility. It's home turf, and he's really, really good. Chucky's just tremendous. Vogue's really good write-up and counter read. Your story today, counterread.com, is where you can find it with Brandon and Aaron Sorensen. Great work from those two, and get subscribed now. Offense, what is enough? What's that magic number? I know we've kind of thrown that around a little bit, but you did a really good job of putting it in some terms with, do you want the knockout punch, or do you want a 12-round TKO, right? That explosiveness versus the efficiency, and some of both, right, is what you want. That's the answer on offense. But when it comes to living up to potential, what do you see this potential being for the Nebraska offense, assuming they move a few steps forward on the old game board?
Yeah, and I do think Nebraska will be better on offense in 2024. Kind of one of the things I tried to explore in this write-up was, like, how's it going to happen? And, there's kind of two basic ways that broadly, there's a lot of detail always in football, but broadly, like, are you going to be the offense that kind of like grinds out drives, or are you going to be a big play offense? And Nebraska was neither last year. And when you look at the Huskers and what they bring back on defense, and I think the potential they have on that side of the ball, like, one of those areas needs to get up to above average, I would say, certainly. And if you get there, Nebraska's got a real chance to have a pretty good season. They were closer in terms of explosiveness, which isn't that surprising. That's one of those, like, kind of like a hot shooting 3-point team that can fluctuate quite a bit game to game, but also year to year. So if I had to bet, I would say, yeah, their easiest path here is to get some more explosive plays. I think the way you'd want to build it, if you could just wave a magic wand to do it, is the other way, with kind of the down-to-down efficiency, staying on schedule, because that only helps what should already be a pretty good defense by just limiting the nothing drives, providing defense better field position, things that didn't happen often enough last year.
It's Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, as we kind of talk about the importance of that explosiveness, you got a guy at quarterback that you feel in Dylan Raiola, or maybe it's Daniel Kalen, that I think you feel like brings you better explosiveness than you had in your offense last year. And with that kind of in mind, the guys you have at quarterback, new weapons at wide receiver, do you still think that 75 yards rushing per quarter is going to be the goal for Nebraska moving forward? Or do you think that number changes slightly given what you might have at quarterback in the upcoming season?
Yeah, good question. I think it can remain the goal. I mean, if you can do that per quarter, well, you're going to be pretty tough to beat, because that's 300 yards a game. You get into the games, though, and how teams defend you, your own ability, who you have available, changes all of that. So I really do think that, like, the stuff that, some of the coaches have put out there in terms of things like that, those goals, it is real. Like, they would love to just be able to line up and kind of manhandle people and play great defense. And if you do that, like, it's a proven winner. At quarterback, with what they have, I think the biggest step forward, or maybe kind of the shortcut here to just some increased offense, is you just get better quarterback play. And, in the story I wrote for today, looked at a bunch of categories for the top 10 defenses last year. What did they do? You know, you had some teams that were explosive. You had some teams that were efficient. You had some teams that ran the ball really well. You had some teams that threw the ball really well. The one thing most of them had in common was pretty good quarterback play, which isn't, you know, a huge shock. But in terms of what upgrades Nebraska the fastest on that side of the ball, getting better quarterback play, whoever it may be.
Brandon Vogel's with us on Hail Varsity Radio. When you talk about the comparison between an explosive offense and an efficient offense, when things aren't going efficiently for this team, how are you able to kind of pull that explosive play out of your back pocket? Because we saw it a couple times last year with a couple of deep shots on that fake option. But going forward, how do they switch things up when things are behind the sticks or really just not really going anywhere?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the toughest questions and one of the central questions in football, I think. Like, you know, it's become common over the last 7, 8, 9 years to hear coaches talk about explosive plays all the time because they're hugely powerful. But it's kind of like handing the bat to the guy in the on deck circle and saying, "Hey, how about you just go hit a home run this time?" Like, well, you're trying, but that doesn't mean you're going to do it. I think so. You know, a play like you mentioned, you know, probably the most famous big play last year, the play action pass, 70-plus yard touchdown to Lloyd off of basically an option action. That's something that, like, you earned. Like, you set that up with your ability to run the ball, what you were showing the defense. Those are nice. Ultimately, I think big plays come down to, particularly in the passing game, just having guys who can win. Like, Keon Coleman did a huge boosted Florida State a ton because he was just great and being able to make those catches. And when I look at Nebraska's roster now, I think they've gotten better. But if you were to say, like, okay, well, here's your new big play guy, who is it? And I don't know if there's a great answer to that. You can maybe say Nayor based on what he did in his breakout season at Wyoming. He averaged almost 20 yards a catch. But until we see it, it's kind of tough to point to a guy and say, well, you get into trouble, it's 3rd and 8 or something like that. Just get him in single coverage and throw it down there. But that's kind of what you're looking for in those situations.
Walter from Philly checks in with Nebraska's offense converting at 37.6% of the time on 3rd down attempts. That was 70th in college football. Vogues were 2 minutes away from a hard break. Might need to keep you for a minute or two overtime. But I think you're right, guys, you get better, steady quarterback play, whoever that is, that'll make sure the offense is a little bit better and you're less feast or famine. Vogues, real quick here, about 90 seconds. When's the last time Nebraska lived up to your expectations / potential? Potential for this football team, I think we all agree, a minimum 7, 8 wins the last decade, right? You go into the season thinking that's where it should be. And it hasn't happened.
Yeah, it hasn't. I mean, like, if you want to be generous and, like, strip away the records and be just like, how good was this team? Like, the closest you can even come to having an argument would be 2021. Like, I think that was a team that was ultimately pretty good in terms of maybe middle of the pack nationally. But that's an uptick from where Nebraska's been. Beyond that, you probably, if you're not going to go to 2016, which was a little bit of a paper tiger in my opinion, it's probably all the way back to maybe the last era of the Bo Pelini, the last year of the Bo Pelini era, which, the problem with Bo Pelini is became that, like, it was just the same each year. So it might be all the way back to then.
Damn, they're ranked and they have 9 wins.
Must
right?
be nice.
Yeah, what is that? Vogues, hang tight with us, okay? Be right back with you.
Okay, sounds
all right, there he is, Brandon Vogel. Counter Reed will continue with Vogues. And hour 2, Brian Christopherson, Gary Barnett. Hail Varsity continues. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We'll hear from Tony White coming up. Hail Varsity, we're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Brandon Vogel from Counter Reed with us. And NU Grandpa's got a question for you, Vogues, out of the stream. And it asks this, he asks this question for Vogel. Do you foresee NIL moving to multi-year contracts to guarantee a player's commitment? Is that the next wave or nuance of NIL, or do you think it stays year to year?
My guess is it stays year to year, mostly because I'm kind of operating under the assumption that the current system we're under can't exist for very long. Like, I think kind of the make or break proposition for college football and probably men's basketball is, are they gonna move to a point where these players are basically paid by the university to kind of tamp down on this? Because, like, I mean, it's obvious to see that NIL is not, it has no actual relationship to a player's actual value in a, national/worldwide marketplace. It's just being used to be like, here's how we're going to pay your salary. We're basically going to ask businesses and fans to do it. So I don't know. I'm somewhat skeptical that our current NIL setup is long for this world. But it's a question of, like, who's going to make that call. And with college football in particular, there's kind of never been anybody at the top of the sport who's going to make that call. So it's a complicated time.
Very much so. I think it depends on the player. I think the vetting part is so important. It's one thing to get a guy who's going to get chipped off or a gal that's going to get chipped off. Great. That's the world you live in. But what's their drive like? What's their motive? Do they want to be high level, or do they want to just kind of be along for the ride? And a guy that I want to highlight here that spoke today is Riley Van Poppel, and was really kind of fascinated by his comments today just about the mental part, the confidence part. And he felt like he finally belonged despite a tough learning curve, playing early and doing well when he was in. But it was that Illinois moment at 4th and goal that really flipped things for him and was great for Nebraska to get that road win. But let's focus on Van Poppel, Vogues, for a second, in his year two and the ability of this staff and Tony White to get guys to just play free, right? That's one thing that was a talking point a year ago. Can guys that are going to see more snaps, more reps, more time, but not have to be the guy, presumably, let loose and really be a killer second unit?
Yeah, his comments today kind of sent me back to, I was watching the Matt Rhule press conference after the Iowa loss. So the season was over. Like, most coaches aren't going to do a press conference at that point because, you'll just wait until December signing day, and that'll be the next time anybody hears from you. Matt Rhule did, and sort of talked about at that point how excited he was for year two to begin, which it has now, because, like, things are going to transition from, hey, this is how coach wants us to do it, to this is how we do it. And I think the defensive line in particular, with the players that Nebraska returns, like proven players in terms of Robinson and Hutmacher, some young up-and-comers, when you look at Linhart or even a Van Poppel in some limited action, we got some really good depth up there. And I think that might be a good example of, like, that change that Rhule was talking about. Nebraska is no longer, like, other than the early enrollees and transfers, they're not learning this stuff. Like, they're executing it. And that's a big difference. And I think it has a big difference when you look at Nebraska up front defensively, because they've got multiple guys up there. If you're not noticing a drop-off when Nash or Ty Robinson comes out of the game, that's a pretty big deal. And that's a pretty big luxury that it's hard to have year after year in college football. And Nebraska may not have it year after year, but on paper, it looks like they could have it now.
Vogues, before we get you out, I need to ask, Elijah's got the
I was just going to go there.
Dilemma of all dilemmas. Denver v. Lakers Monday night. What would Vogues do? Spend the money to get in, i.e. nosebleeds? Splurge on the suite because at least it's guaranteed comfort and sightline, or lower bowl where you could still be elevated a little bit in the lower bowl, or really sell a kidney and get those first 12 rows or something.
I found some seats in the first 12 rows for reasonable prices, but they're directly behind the basket, and I don't think that's what you want.
That's not good, no.
You don't want to influence a free throw, Elijah? Anyway.
That would be my spot to go yell at LeBron.
You could win the game. I would go.
Pull the old Michael Phelps and show up in his Speedo behind the basket.
Yep. I'd be pretty firmly, I think, anti-sweet on this one. It's a playoff game. Being in the building, I think, is the primary benefit. So I'd start there, and then if I found value, quote unquote, to like a better seat, I'd take it. But I think just being there for the playoff atmosphere, et cetera, is what you're really, really paying for here. So I'd probably leave it be at that.
Okay.
Well, Eric says just get courtside. I think the tone from the stream comment, quit jacking around and just splurge, get courtside. Tiger Shark says, what if LeBron pulls out last minute? As usual.
That did happen a couple of years ago. I went to a Nuggets-Lakers game in Denver. LeBron, Anthony Davis, Jokic all got pulled last minute.
That's code for lost on the way to the arena.
I left at halftime.
By one of the many Lodo distributors. I'm kidding.
No,
joking.
I left at halftime, and then lo and behold, I think it was Austin Reeves puts up a triple-double or something stupid like that, and the game went to overtime, and I missed it. But whatever. LeBron, Jokic, and AD weren't playing. But they're going to be – it's playoffs. It's playoffs. They're going to be playing.
But it's only game 2.
No guarantees until it's elimination on the line.
That's right. Vogues, what's coming up from Cal to Reed? How can folks get subscribed?
Yeah, so Anna's got a little more from football coming up for tomorrow, and then we'll be full on spring games actually here starting next week. So got some good stuff coming up on that. I'm interested in what Nebraska's done in the transfer portal on the basketball side. So that's on my list of things to get to. But kind of a consistent stream of things over there on our Substack. You can get signed up at counterread.com. Paid subscribers get 2 exclusive newsletters a week, and you can subscribe for free and check out the free stuff that we do as well.
Love it. Brandon Vogel, counterread.com. Check out what him and Aaron Sorensen are doing. Vogues, you take care. Thanks for joining us today, bud. We'll talk Saturday.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
There he is, Brandon Vogel with the Hawaiian shirt, and he'll get that Detroit Tigers lid, and he may challenge you for mustache superiority, if he so chooses.
Oh, I lose in the mustache superiority discussion a lot. That's okay. It
takes a special talent to win that.
To win a mustache competition, you got to have something special on that upper lip, and I understand. I ain't got nothing special.
That sounds so bad. Okay.
If you curl it, you might have a chance.
With Nebraska. For you two, think about it here, and I want your year. What year do you think Nebraska lived up to potential? Potential being in contention, based on the roster and expectations going into a season. We'll wind down hour 1 with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7, coming up here in 10 minutes. Gary Barnett with his Todd emails in, chris@hailvarsity.com. I'm going to have to edit this so I don't get suspended, Todd, but the way he writes it, he's guessing that LeBron has ejected a few times in his day.
Load management.
Yes. Something like that. So,
Jesus.
Todd, you're back on the email, and there's proof to that with the fact that there's a few games. And Elijah, last time you wanted to see the Lakers and Nuggets, there was no LeBron.
It should be noted that was the last game of the regular season in a game that did not matter for.
I feel like that's a minor detail you left out.
Did not matter for seeding whatsoever. So I kind of deserved what I had coming. That was I pulled off both the Rockies and the Nuggets that week, and that was the last time I did it. I've told this story to Connor just a couple days ago. That was the infamous Denver day trip. That was horrible, where we left on a Sunday morning and we're back on a Monday morning.
See, that's a wrong answer.
Yeah, that was not worth it.
Yeah.
That was one of those things.
You got to go camping
that night.
No?
No,
Slept
because
in
that
your
was
car?
we left Lincoln at 4 a.m. Sunday, made it to the Rockies game at noon local time. Got dinner, went to the Nuggets game at 7 local time, and then hopped back in the car, and we're back in Lincoln by 7 a.m. on Monday.
That was pretty compact. We did the Big Ten championship game, me and Iowa Russ, and somehow made the flight. So the last time Nebraska lived up to potential, what team, what year? Walter from Philly says 1999. That team was incredible, and it looked shaky early because of their offense. Defense was great, Walter, but agree they were 12-1, finished number 2 in the country, got hosed against Texas that year. And your grandpa says 93. 93 was awesome because they went unbeaten and just narrowly lost to Florida State. For me, I'm going to go back to 2012. 2012, they got challenged, got a win out. That was after the Ohio State game. In that Ohio State game, you score enough points, 36, to probably win the game, but you gave up 60-plus to Braxton Miller and company. Rex ended up getting dinged. Hello, Amir. And Nebraska won that year in super dramatic fashion. Last-minute wins against Northwestern. Last-minute wins. Who else am I missing? Against Michigan State. That was an incredible game. And then you beat Michigan, and then you got to the Big Ten championship game, and it was very ugly. You beat Wisconsin that year too. So you lost to UCLA on the road that year. That was a bit of a shocker there. You kind of had a tough fourth quarter. But 2012, I mean, they got to a conference title game. I think this team, no matter the new landscape of the Big Ten, I think the defense will be as good as advertised. I think the offense, to Vogues' point, will be a bit more consistent because you'll get consistent quarterback play. Even if it's young quarterback play, there's enough old guys around the young guy to be all right. And, hey, I think they'll have a puncher's chance. I'm not going to throw a number out yet, but I think you could have a nice surprise here. Do you guys have a year?
2016 to me. That's the last time you beat everybody you're expected to beat. Your losses in 2016 were Wisconsin, Ohio State, and then you got absolutely murdered by Iowa at Kinnick. But, I mean, you beat the team you're supposed to beat.
Iowa was really good that year.
Northwestern, Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland. You beat the teams on your schedule you were supposed to beat. That was probably the last time that happened, and I think that's hitting your expectations.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Okay, 2016, the 9-4 November fade. Let's get to hour 2. It's Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you. It's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark in. Welcome back to the show, Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. And can read him, Husker247.com, at Husker247BC. Follow him on Twitter. Brian, good to spend some time, man. How we doing?
I'm not doing too bad. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, good to talk with you. So, what answer would you have? We have hilarity ensuing in the StreamYard comments as we're on video at the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and Crew is asking about the possibility of drinking 4 to 6 beers as he waits at the airport. He has been challenged to do 9 by listener Walter. BC, what do you say, aside from let's get a loan if we're going to drink anywhere between 3 and 7 beers at an airport?
Yeah. How long is the wait until he hops on the bird?
Probably not long enough.
He says, okay. I'm about to fly out.
All right. It also would depend if he's like a middle seat where you feel like you're going to have a stressful situation to get out and get in, and you use the restroom. I think I need to know some more details perhaps. But I always say stop at 4, but I'm getting old, so I'm kind of lame now.
Crew will be listening to a Nebraska radio show while he's being removed from the aisle.
Crew will be sitting there after 8 beers. That dude back there is not real.
No. That's funny. Let's talk Nebraska here. Tony White in front of the media today. And, Brian, what'd you make of the call-out that Coach White shared with us? Matt Rhule getting after his coaches on Saturday scrimmage.
That was interesting. That just kind of popped up because I didn't sense until today that the defense had a really off scrimmage or anything from anything I'd heard. But I think that speaks to sort of the standard that the head coach has for that unit, what he thinks they can be. And, I mean, you heard Tony White. At first he's going through, some of the guys who made plays, like Bly Hill and Kai Wallen and some, guys stepping up and sort of getting some activity that's good for them and their run toward moving up the depth chart. And then suddenly in the middle, it's got a little bit of a call out. And I just like sort of how that staff seems to flow. And I think it's real where they can take criticism. They appreciate that the head man holds them to a certain standard and is always going to. And they listen. White listens to Matt Rhule, and Tony White listens to his other assistant coaches, too, when it's like, okay, we've been called out. What can we do to solve this problem or be better by the time we take the field Tuesday? And the way he explained it is he's getting input from Evan Cooper and Dvoracek and T. Knighton and all those guys and taking it into factor. And, I think they're confident then if they communicate the right sort of plan or how they want to attack a practice in front of players, they've got enough veterans that can do what they're asked and that can filter down to the younger guys too. And so that's a promising thing. So obviously they're very excited about how they took the field the last 2 practices on defense since then. So that was an interesting part of the press conference, though. We get some of that I think behind the scenes more real talk than we've gotten with some previous staff. So it's always kind of jolts you a little bit still.
Brian, as a whole, what do you make of Matt Rhule's public call-outs? It hasn't just been coaching staff guys. When you go back to last year, guys coming into camp overweight. I mean, this year you had the comment with Mazuka figuring out how we do things around here at Nebraska. I'm paraphrasing from Matt Rhule. But what do you make of that being the standard for Rhule, that he gives messages not only to his team but also to his coaches through the media?
Yeah, and I think it works. I think it's shown that it can be receptive. He used to do that at Temple. You go back, and he had some real tough cases to deal with individuals, and he'd send them home. He'd send players home, and some guys who are in the NFL or were in the NFL and had good careers got sent home from camps back then. And so I've had to adjust, and I think that the media has somewhat to that a bit. Last spring, I always use this example, but Tommy Hill wasn't there the first day of spring ball, and he was one of those guys that sort of got mentioned. And we have lived in a world where you kind of jump to the conclusion, Matt, and you're like, is he in the program anymore? You kind of just, you wonder, where's that going to go? Maybe that's the end of that story. And I think we learned through last season that's not the end of it. If guys respond in kind to it, they're going to have a chance to work themselves back. It worked for Tommy Hill. And so when I heard that, about Mike Mazuka, for instance, in January, early February, I kind of treated it differently this time. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But I didn't move on to the idea okay, he's not going to be in the mix here or anything like that. I thought, let's see how he responds. And it seems like he's sort of done that. And we're starting to hear that Stephon Thompson is sort of doing that too. So it's a tactic that you maybe don't use with everyone, but there's certain players are going to hear it, and if they can process it right, it can be effective for them, and so that's what they're doing.
Brian, I kind of took that comment today that we heard from Tony White that everybody's kind of on an even playing field. It doesn't really matter if you're a player or a coach, and I feel like that message will get carried down through the assistant coaches and obviously through the veteran guys on the team. Did that kind of resonate with you as well, that, hey, just because you're a coach doesn't mean we won't get after you for something not being good enough?
Yeah, and players last offseason, I think, kind of picked up on that Rhule will, he has that same bar he wants his coaches to reach. And if they're not meeting it, they'll hear about it too. And I think players like that because it's like, okay, this is a two-way street, and there should be a standard for the guy who's telling me what to do as well, and that he's doing it the right way, and there's a good process going on there. So no doubt that's how I took it, and I think he's got a staff. A lot of those guys have been around him long enough that they're family and they can have tough talks, I think, with each other, and they can take criticism from one another and know that it's meant to better that person. And, you give Tony White a lot of credit, too, because he came in, as sort of the odd man who hadn't been a part of that family previously and seems to fit right in with it. And I also get the sense when I listen to Tony talk that he's taking mental notes about how he might do things when he's a head coach one day. And there's a lot of lessons like that he can learn about sort of these points that Rhule stresses to try to be efficient that he will use in the future when he gets his chance.
Brian Christopherson's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, can catch BC on Twitter at Husker247 BC. That accountability from top downs talked about, but was realized Saturday, and Coach White touched on how the guys bounced back, BC, and was impressed with it. On the offensive side of the ball, and we'll get your take here on the last time Nebraska football lived up to their potential. What team or year comes to mind? I want to get your thoughts on the offensive potential. How big a leap are you thinking that side of the ball can take to complement a really good returning defense?
Yeah, that's a big question, and it's been tough when you've looked at the stat sheet with Nebraska football recently. Whenever I get to the offensive stats, I always scroll down or to the very end from previous seasons. You're like, okay, they're going to be somewhere between like 106 and 133 here in whatever ranking I'm looking at. And so I always think of it in the context of get me to the point where when I'm looking up, okay, what is Nebraska's yards per pass attempt, for example, that I'm going to the middle of it. I'm kind of searching like in that 60 to 75 range or something like that. And I really feel like I know you had Vogues on earlier, and he's, I think, the best in our market at getting inside the numbers with that stuff. So he could do way more justice than I could on that subject. But I really think, just generally speaking, it's got to be the type of offense where you're in that middle ground, and then if this defense can be a top 10 defense, which I like the fact that they talk about that and have the confidence that they can be that, and then in the next sentence say we got to put in the work to reach that. But if you could combine those two things together, top 10 defense, offense, it's 65th in some of these stats, you could win a lot of games with that.
Brian, in order for Nebraska to be that top 10 defense, as you say, you assume they have to be elite in at least one thing, if not a couple of things. Where do you see potential for this team, this defense specifically, to be elite in 2024?
I believe in the run defense still should stack right up there near the top. I think the schedule early on, I know Colorado's got the skilled guys, and you got to take them seriously, but you kind of look around that game, and they're the first 5 games or so, you see opportunities to build confidence and good numbers. So I would start with the run defense because of what we saw from Nash and Ty and how I think they actually do have guys they can rotate on the defensive front and not have a big drop-off. So that would be one area. The area, though, where it's got to change to, I think, really flip the script for this team is the takeaways. And I like that Matt Rhule, whenever he talks about turnover margin, everybody always wants to, for fair reason, harp on the giveaways last year, which were ridiculous. But he'll just as quickly point out, they only got 13 takeaways, and they've got to bump that number up significantly. So I want to see a defense that knocks the ball loose, just to put it in simple terms again, where you're seeing the ball on the turf. There's the kind of hits where you jar it loose, you hit a QB from behind, someone picks it up, gets a, fumble return. Those sort of plays are going to be what decide if you win a 4-point game or lose a 3-point game. And they've got to have a few more of those to go from being a really good defense to an elite defense. And that's the difference to me, is you don't just get off the field. You sometimes take it away and the marching band's playing. They need to be that kind of crew, I think.
BC, what about potential? What Nebraska team in your mind last lived up to potential, what you thought they could be going into the year?
Oh, man. This is a tough answer because it got erased in Indianapolis. I mean, 2012 is the last time at the end of a regular season, if you count the 12-game schedule, where I felt like people had a good vibe on how Nebraska football had completed a mission, you know, and then people could scoff at that because of what happened the next week. But for like that weekend, that team and running the table the last 6 games kind of stands out to me. But that's where it's tough because it's always just sort of been like these fleeting moments of satisfaction, and then you really get kicked in the jewels or something the next week or whatever. So, I guess 2012 would be an answer, but I don't know that it's a good answer, honestly.
So good. You're right, dude. You feel good 1 minute, the next thing you need a bag of ice.
Yeah,
you know?
it's just not good.
The 2021 season was the ultimate kick in the jewels season, I think.
Well, yeah,
that was week after week after week.
Yeah.
That was the old tree stump.
That was rough. Brian, real quick, we got a couple minutes here, and this is kind of the $1 million question here today with news breaking the last couple of hours. Where do you think Chucky Hepburn is going to end up next year?
Oh, man. I know there's murmurs about Michigan State, and I've stepped away the last hour or two from it, so I don't know if some things have changed. I kind of wonder if it's another place in the Big Ten that's not Nebraska, but we'll see. Obviously it's kind of one of those funny things, Chucky Hepburn, who people have kind of wondered, is he ever going to go in the portal and could he come home and all that stuff? Now that he's in the portal, of course, Nebraska just added a point guard, a few days ago to build depth, with Raleigh Wooster and obviously Ulis is still over there. So my prediction is not Nebraska, but I'd love to be wrong on that, but that's my prediction.
Maybe somewhere closer to Nebraska, just up the road in downtown Omaha. Maybe he lands back at Creighton.
Brian, before we get you out of here, the question of the day that we've been discussing on Hail Varsity that we need to get to. I'm going to the Nuggets-Lakers game on Monday night. I am looking to secure some tickets to set up the background. What is your take on attending a sporting event in person? You're the kind of guy that wants to just get in there, give me the cheap price, get the nosebleeds. Should I go sit somewhere in the lower bowl where I can find a reasonable price? Do I shell out for a suite? What's your take on getting that experience going to the sporting event, one of the big ones such as an NBA playoff game?
For basketball, you got to get within if it's a 3-level gym, you got to get within the first 2 levels, I feel like. No disrespect to season ticket holders up in 307 at PBA or anything, but if this is like a one-time deal, you got to be within the 2 levels. Otherwise, I just feel like with basketball, it's too far away. It's not worth it.
How do you feel about a potential good deal on like the 7th row right behind the hoop?
Oh, I'd be fine. I think that's great.
You're not worried about the obstructed view?
It's obstructed, dude. You're stealing your money.
Oh, I don't know. I would go if you feel the price is right enough. I would go with that, and I wouldn't hold back. I can tell there's dissenting opinion on this.
That's why it's the discussion of the day.
I don't want to get too far into the ring, but I would say I would go with that. Like if you told me if I was your buddy and you got 2 tickets, and you said 7th row behind the hoop, I'd be pretty stoked about it.
Okay.
Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7 BC on Twitter and Husker247.com. Read him and the crew there. BC will holler again soon. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk to you later.
All right, there he is, Brian Christopherson. We'll check in with Coach Barnett next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Hall of Fame coach with Colorado Northwestern, Gary Barnett with us. And Coach, were you Were you putting like a Masters champion this week?
No, I wasn't putting like a Masters champion, but that was Scheffler was impressive in the Masters, wasn't he? He was
unreal.
Those two guys, Morikawa and Obear, hit it in the water on 11. You just knew he knew right there that all he had to do was choke him out of it. He did. So he's such a good player. It's steady.
He's good. Now, I've whined to you about my putting, and I want to hear this claw method. Usually it's a wrestling move or wrestling, but you've got it. You've got it for your putting go-to. Is that how you're making your putts for dough?
Yeah, really. Since I've gone to the claw, I'm a much better putter, and it's just tries to take your right hand out of it, and just there's a lot of guys using it on the tour, but go to Morikawa. He's probably the best, but you can just go online and see his putting style, or go to the claw putting style. You'll see it, and it's just you still have to rock your shoulders, which is the key, but you get much less of your right hand involved, and you get more of a little pull on the putter instead of a push or a hit. A lot of people just hit it, the putt. So that's my advice, Chris. Go take a look.
I will. I am going to log on here after the interview winds down, and I'm going to reform my putt. Now it's got to get warm enough to go play this weekend. That isn't going to happen. Coach, I got to ask you about points in the Big Ten, and what do you think is a number that's fair, that's reasonable, that can win you ball games? How many points of ball games an offense need in the Big Ten and in college football this season?
Well, because it's such a complimentary game, it really depends on your defense. What can you hold them to? As much I almost look at it the other way. What is it your defense is capable of holding most offenses to? And then you need one more point. And so, to me, that's the way you look at it instead of how many points am I going to have to score. It's you've always got to score points. You've got to score one more than the other guy. But the key is holding the other guy to as few as possible. So it just depends on how you view that stuff. But I don't know that I could give you a points on offense number. I'd almost say, if you can hold everybody you play to under 20, you ought to be able to win games. And to me, that's as much a key as anything if you're going to look at points. It's so hard to control the points issue, I think, but it's not as hard to control the defensive side of it.
Coach, I want to talk about the quarterback competition, and it's looked better for Nebraska with some improved mechanics from Harburg. He's a kid that won 5 games last year, but more of the option runner threat. Both the freshmen have impressed for Nebraska in some of the practices and scrimmages. How do you balance a good, pretty stiff competition mentality in that room where each guy wants to go win it, but they're also great teammates and helping each other out? It sounds too good to be true, but I think it's happening.
No, I think that's pretty typical. I think you get in there and guys, they get close to each other and they root for each other. They really do. And it's not like me on the golf course where I'm hoping a guy misses a putt. It doesn't work that way, because that's the only way I can win if he misses the putt. But no, you're on a team and you learn so much about each other in those rooms and in practice, and you're really pulling for each other. And what happens is you push each other, and it's very healthy to have a room with 3 guys that are all trying to make each other better, and they're all there for the right reasons. So it's I think that's just what you want.
Gary Barnett with us, few minutes, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, there's been some blowback this week on social media towards Coach Prime. I wanted to get your take here. Social media is absolutely used for recruiting, but the fact that Shiloh and Shadur are busy on Twitter requests for, hey, send your film our way. Is Dion just doing it in such a different way? Folks are just getting their feathers ruffled here? Or what's your reaction here to some of the blowback or, I guess, side-eye that's going on with how Dion isn't out there really kind of humping it on the recruiting trail?
Well, I think he's just completely different than anybody else that's out there. And, I can't place an evaluation on it or a value on it yet because you get judged by how many games you win, and that's just about it. And anymore, that's just about all that counts because kids are moving around so fast. Graduation rates, things like that don't mean anything. They're not. There's no accountability on it, and they don't mean anything. So Dion's got a different way of doing it, and we're just going to have to see. A couple years down the road, I mean, including this year, whether it pans out for him, whether it's a viable way to do it. And he's completely different than anybody else that's in this business as well, just because of his celebrity status and the fact that he's so well known. And there's nothing hidden about him because everything's on a YouTube channel or a YouTube post. So, everything about the guy that you could possibly know. And that's probably what he's saying. He's saying, I don't need to be in your house. I don't need to be in your high school. Everything I'm about is out there. Check it out. So different way of doing it. And, when there's one guy doing it completely different and that person's always going to draw the ire of everybody else because, why can't he do it like everybody else? And why does he have to be different? That kind of stuff starts being questioned. So, he's just different. And we're, like I said, let's see what happens.
What made you different on the recruiting trail? You did really good work in your time getting players. Was it your evaluation? Was it your honesty? What stuck out about you? What do you think? What would peers say?
Well, I would hope that it would be my honesty. I think there's also I had a passion for recruiting. I had a passion for meeting parents. I had a passion for meeting teachers in the schools. And I wasn't – when I first started, I was, a young guy and guys could sort of relate. But, as time went on, I was their dad, not their brother. And that was the way I presented myself, and I held to that. And so, but I think that my strength was probably parental relationships, as well as the honesty piece of it.
What do you think Coach Prime's strength is? It seems like he's really good at wanting to do the right things, as in, connecting, trying to help these kids grow up. Is that a fair take on my end from a far out view? He does.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, his celebrity status, the fact that he was maybe the best player to ever play at that position, and all the things he's done appeals to a certain percentage of and type of athlete. And so I think that appeal, I think that what he says he stands for is also appealing because it's out there and you hear him talking about it all the time. You don't hear Matt talking about it. He's not on YouTube. Not everybody in the country hears what Matt Rhule's going to say, but everybody in the country hears what Dion's going to say. So he's just got a bigger audience, and he's taking advantage of that, is the way I look at it.
Coach, you are called to be on the College Football Playoff Committee. When it comes to this expanded playoff, what do you value? Do you value more wins, or do you value strength of schedule? Well,
not to avoid your question, but it's got to be a combination. And I think that's what they're trying to get to, is a combination of that. And I think that by doing 12 teams or 14, whatever they end up with, is they're getting a wider variety of teams who have won more games and a little wider variety of people who've had better schedules. So, where in the past you only have choice of 4 teams, and you have to be pretty specific, as we saw this year. But I think by going to 12 or 14 that you expand and you actually give yourself a chance to look at teams who've done one or the other or a combination. And I think that's why they really went to it. They wanted to be more inclusive, of course, to include more teams, but more teams that play a harder schedule, more teams that win more games. And so I think that's the purpose of it. And if I were going to go beyond the committee, that's what I'd hope the committee would tell me our goal was, is to increase the numbers of both of those teams with better schedules and those who've won more games.
You're not going to be able to find too many teams willing anymore to stick their neck out, are you? From a strength of schedule, out of conference standpoint. I mean, you're going to probably schedule more in-conference games in the Big Ten and the SEC because you've got so many helmet game choices.
Well, yes, probably so, Chris. But there's just programs want to play the better programs. Coaches want to play the better teams. They want to coach against the better coaches. Players want to play against better teams. And so you can't throw that out. You can't say that everybody's just going to go play an easier schedule, because sooner or later that schedule isn't going to exist. So everybody's going to take up all the easy games. So I think it's a combination. I don't know. I think there's still going to be people that line up and want to go play the best early, because you really find out who you are. You don't really find out who you are playing teams that really struggle and you have no problems with them. You don't learn a lot by games like that. You don't get better by playing games like that. You get better by playing really good competition.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, what do you think about the Buff transition back to the Big 12? I just saw the schedule. I know Nebraska week 2. We're excited for it here. But just overall, how do you think the transition goes? Pac-12 was really good last year.
It's such a sad thing what happened with Pac-12 in all sports. And you know what, Chris? My contention is if Deion Sanders had been in the league a year earlier, that league would never have folded.
That's fair.
But going into the Big 12, it's a different kind of challenge. They're not playing SC, they're not playing UCLA, they're not playing Oregon, they're not playing Washington, they're not playing Texas, and they're not playing Oklahoma. So people look at that, the average fan looks at that and says, well, they better do pretty doggone well because they're not playing the toughest teams. Well, there's pretty tough teams in the Big 12. This maybe not as have the notoriety that those other teams I was talking about, but it's going to be interesting. I think it's probably, what I'm concerned about is them not respecting those teams in the Big 12 like they respected the teams in the Pac-12 or those 6 teams that I talked about. Mm-hmm. You better respect Iowa State exactly the way you respected Texas. You better respect Kansas now just the way you respected UCLA. So that's the challenge, I think, in the program in football. Basketball, you already know. I mean, Tad Boyle in basketball has got his hands full. He's going literally out of the hot pan into the fire with that conference in basketball. So it's, it depends on the respect factor that they take to all these games.
Gary Barnett, Coach, have yourself a great weekend. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Chris, great being with you. And look up Colin Morikawa's putting style.
The claw.
The claw.
Will do, and going to use the claw when I get back out on the golf course. The putting stance, not the drink.
So I was going to say, my putting style, I think, I'm going to describe it as the claw. I just describe it as erratic.
I describe it as eyes wide shut.
I describe mine as bad.
Yeah, it's just awful. Have another vodka lemonade. Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Chris Schmidt, Hail Varsity Radio. Good stuff from Coach Barnett. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, where you can download the podcast, find and follow us on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can watch the show that way and like and subscribe there. So the headline out of today's post-practice was from Coach Tony White and Nebraska. Really the call-out, right? Matt Rhule calling out, and we had heard that when we talked about Saturday's scrimmage way back this week on Monday, that Rhule got after not only the team but his coaches. And Coach Tony White was asked about that here, cut 6, about getting checked by the head man.
You're never good enough. Now the really cool thing, okay, I'm gonna say this because I don't think he'll say it, that after the scrimmage when we came back and watched it, coach got on me because it wasn't good enough. It just wasn't good enough, and so we went back and we looked, because this group of guys in the locker room, they do what you ask, man. These guys are blue collar. They make coaching fun, So I looked at it and we went back as a defense staff and said, how can we do this? And so we tweaked some things on defense and explained to them. And I apologized to the guys. I said, hey guys, this is my fault. This is what we want to look like. This is what we want to do, and showed them. And Tuesday they went out there and they ran around with their hair on fire, and I was like, wow. I think everybody's like, holy cow, what's going on? And then today, to start it off, they had the same attitude towards them. So I had to apologize to the guys. It was my fault, you know what I mean? And it was really fun to watch those guys, Jamari, Bullock, Giff. I mean, those guys, Keese, go out there with the little chip on their shoulder and fly around. So again, you're never good enough. You're always tweaking something. You're always trying to challenge somebody. You're always trying to make sure that guys are getting better and not. And when coach jumped us for that, it was a great thing. You know what I mean? So we were able to redefine some things.
Pretty strong team and staff and group of players that don't take that the wrong way. Too many times you can't take critical statements when it is in the form of trying to make you better. That's healthy. And the way it's said and what is said is understood, but it's not out of the norm. I think this is good for the football program in a sense where it's within the scope of having the same goal to win a lot of ball games this year versus, dude, our guy got called out. What's Rhule doing? Or, he just embarrassed me in front of my side of the football. What's up here? It could drift into that if you don't have a strong kind of backbone within the football team.
And part of that backbone is that consistency in your accountability, that whether you're a coordinator or a position coach or a starter or a starting quarterback that's making however much in NIL money this year compared to the walk-on that everybody's held
one's
to
above
the same
the law.
Standard. No one being above the law. It helps with that too. You have to have a backbone in your enforcement, in that the standard does not change based on if you're a coach, a player, a star player, a bench guy, a walk-on, everyone being held to the same standard. Feels less personal whenever you get called out at practice, whenever you look at another guy who maybe is making more in NIL than you, or a guy that is, he's a starter and you're on the third string, or he's a coach. They're all getting held to that same standard. They're all getting their butts chewed at practice. Makes you feel a little bit better about it, because it's no longer I'm the one getting called out. It's, okay, you're right. Everyone in this team has a standard, and I need to reach that standard because I'm not there right now.
Well, you can accept it, take it, and get better from it. More from Coach White, cut 7 here, as to why Rhule was pissed.
We got to play hard. We want to, we want to have the habits. Okay, we want to create the habits of the best defense in the country, right? That's what we want to do. Okay, the best defense in the country, they have certain habits that they run to the ball, they're physical, they don't give a crap, and they play with ultimate confidence. And so that was the thing, making sure that those guys are confident. Like, they're big, they're strong and fast. They, from what Corey, Mitch, and Kristen has been doing with them in off season, they know what to do. They've been sitting in meetings. Bro, go out there and play. Go out there and play. No hesitation, no fear. Like, go play, and then we'll correct it later. So I think that's the next step, is to make sure that every guy believes, man, like they are monsters out there, that they can just go out and play fast and physical, and then we'll correct the stuff later. But just go out there and put it on tape, and let's see.
We'll have a couple more comments from Tony White here before the show winds down, and maybe sneak in some Riley Van Poppel. Reminder about getting buckled up. Coaches make substitutions during the game to get the best player on the field. Getting behind the wheel after drinking also demands a substitution. Impaired driving is deceptively dangerous. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Have you settled on seats yet, Elijah? Have you pulled the trigger for the Lakers v. Nuggets Monday night?
I'm sitting here. I've been sitting here.
It's been a 2-hour ordeal.
The whole
I'm glad
segment.
you're not chintzy with spending the dough. It's a playoff game. I had a chance to go see a Stanley Cup game 3-4 years ago for Juniors baseball team out in Denver. I passed it up.
Still regret it?
No,
Okay.
we were in the low dough. It was a good time.
I've been sitting here in checkout the whole time. Should I press pay?
It's your money, brother. It's your money. We just expect pictures and you to sit by some really interesting people in the suite.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Thursday, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the podcast for Hail Varsity Radio. Subscribe and like the Hail Varsity YouTube channel and watch the show. Rewind it that way. Elijah Herbel is off to Colorado. Connor Clark is skipping the gym tonight. Chris Schmidt, I don't know if I'm going to go to the gym or not.
It's not true. I'm going to man up.
Are you really?
Well, yeah, I mean, my upper half isn't sore.
Okay.
So I'm good there.
Like
You're just going to waddle from machine to machine.
Yeah, it might look a little weird, but, we'll get it done.
Good for you.
I'm also, what are you lifting tonight, Connor? Do you know?
I'll do a little, probably chest and tries action today.
I'm opposite.
I'm doing some chest and tries. I wish my voice was as deep as Connor's.
It's a pull day for me, so I believe it's back and bicep.
That's my favorite
It's
day.
a red meat day for me.
That's also, I think,
wish
the ideal.
it was for me.
Before a road trip, I think that's also the lift you want to hit. You don't want your legs to be too sore whenever you're sitting in the car all day, or else you're just going to be asking for trouble.
Why don't you take the train overnight?
Because I'm going to need my car to get from event to event in Colorado. We're staying slightly outside Denver in our Airbnb, kind of up in the mountains. So in order to get down to Denver for these events, we need to have a vehicle.
Do you have the memorial plate picked out for the Boulder Peace Treaty?
No, I think it might just be a picture for now.
Okay.
I have not gone forward with the hotel and announced my intentions to replace a tile on the floor with a plaque, and I feel like they might frown on that.
Instead of the Hollywood Walk of Fame, it's the site where the Boulder Peace Treaty was commenced. Taps turned back on for Nebraska fans, post-Nebraska, Colorado. The Snitleys responsible, and it was a good day. Needed it if you're a Nebraska fan after that in Boulder. Payback, though, week 2, possibly. Last thought here from Tony White, and when it comes to that accountability we're talking about here, the headline today, Matt Rhule and his direction towards his defensive coordinator, and it not being good enough to start off scrimmage last Saturday.
Yeah, the great ones do, right? The great ones do. They're not satisfied, right? And they're always figuring out a way. And I said this when my first observations with Coach Rhule, like, you're always looking, you're always finding ways to try to do something better, more efficient, give somebody more confidence to go out there and do it. Your position coaches, whatever it is, recruiting, the nutrition staff, the weight staff, whatever it may be, he's always looking, and he's always like trying to figure out a way to make things better, and you saw the tape on Saturday, and sure, there's some great individual performances, but as a whole, we talk about taking this next step, and I said this, like, everything is words until it's put in action, right? So you talk about taking the next step where it's not showing up on film, so then you have to go back, and it always starts with me on defense, right? And then going back and saying, how are we talking to the guys? Do they know? Do they see it? And then Coach Coop having great ideas, Coach Dvorak having great ideas, Coach T. Knight having great ideas. Everybody in that D staff room coming together and saying, hey, this is, maybe we need to do this, we need to do this. And it's like, damn, okay, let's do that. And the young men so far have responded 2 practices in. So kudos to them, and we'll see what happens. We'll go up and watch the film, and then we'll see what happens on Saturday.
That's Tony White. We'll try and sneak in some Van Poppel tomorrow. Elijah off to Colorado. Connor Clark is commandeered in studio tomorrow.
Assuming I have
Monday
internet connection in the mountains, I will be checking in from the mountains on Saturday morning.
Okay.
That is the plan.
The weekend edition will be a dual state affair. That'll work well. But Jacob Padilla tomorrow, possibly.
I heard some sarcasm in your voice when you said that'll work well.
I mean, we'll see. We shall see.
Only
right?
time will tell.
Uh-huh. We'll spend time with Jacob Padilla tomorrow. We'll run down the Pride of Fairbury, Bill Dolman. Clausburn, he's imaginary. He wears red. He'll be back tomorrow. Thanks to Brian Christopherson, Coach Gary Barnett, Brandon Vogel today. Talk tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.